This was written to the director of the CIA in December of 1952 by his director of scientific intelligence. All right? So the top director of scientific intelligence of the CIA is talking about UFOs to the director of the CIA. That's the setting. I'm going to read you this paragraph right here. It's right here. He writes, "At this time, the reports of incidents convince us that there is something going on which must have immediate attention. Sightings of unexplained objects at great altitudes and traveling at high speeds in the vicinity of major U.S. defense installations are of such nature that they are not attributable to natural phenomena or known types of aerial vehicles." How much more open and obvious do you want a statement like that to be? It's a bureaucratic memo, you know? It's pretty straightforward. He's telling the director of the CIA, there's something important going on here. This is not natural, and this is nothing that we know over sensitive installations, over major U.S. defense installations. Holy smokes, that's important. And again, had this been leaked out in 1952, yes, I certainly think it would be a very different ball of wax today, but no, it didn't. Came out in the late 70s, and by then, you know, I had a nation of zombies by then. You know, it's gotten worse ever since. No one cared. And the press just kind of let it go. This, I don't want to get too much. This is a fascinating case, actually. Over the Congo, this is another nuclear case, though. See? They're interested in nuclear technology. There was a uranium mine in the Congo. We have this document that came out about it. Essentially, what you see is they describe two fiery disks seen over the uranium mines. They very, very high performance. They sent a fighter pilot to pursue. Gets a good look at it. Comes to within 120 meters of one of the discs. Says it's about 12 to 15 meters diameter, about 50 feet wide. Discus shaped. Lots of description here. Able to travel precisely and easily, both horizontally and vertically. Really amazing stuff. And, you know, he just can't compete. Good fighter pilot, described as dependable, zealous flyer, etc., etc., etc. So we have that one. And this is something I wrote about in my new book, which, I'm sadly, I've sold out, but hey, it's on Amazon, you can get it. It's called I did an interview with a retired U.S. Navy individual from a few months ago, about a year ago, who participated in something known as Operation Dominic. And you could look this up on Wiki. Of course, like with everything on Wikipedia, it's a mixed bag. When you get to sensitive things on Wikipedia, you have to realize that encyclopedia is highly managed. Wikipedia is great for like Justin Timberlake and Miley Cyrus's twerking. If you want to look up the latest on Miley Cyrus, I suggest Wikipedia, except of course they'll leave out the Illuminati connection, so you got that. But otherwise, it's pretty good. I'm glad you like that, Grant. It's kind of weak on Operation Dominic, but what Operation Dominic was, the United States decided in 1962, hey, let's blow up 36 really super powerful hydrogen bombs in the upper atmosphere off the coast of Hawaii this year. What could possibly go wrong with that? So that was Operation Dominic. That's what they thought. And by the way, this is a really significant part of our history, and we forget. From 1945 to 1998, there were 2,050, my friends, detonations of nuclear bombs on planet Earth. Over 2,000. Over 2,000. And, you know, if you're an observing intelligence looking at these people, I got to think that the nuclear explosions would be of interest. If nothing else, the electromagnetic pulse might just be an annoyance for them. Just possible. Operation Dominic, this guy was in the Navy at the time. He was participating in this. And what he said to me was that there was no exception. Every single time they were going to do a detonation, there were bogeys in the sky, that is UFOs, which would always disappear just before detonation. Like they knew what was going to happen. Except what he said to me on one occasion where one of these objects apparently went down. He was, along with some other sailors, called from below deck, because they would all go below deck during the detonation, but he was called above deck, positioned on the side of the vessel, getting sea spray at them and all of that, and told to look straight ahead and be an observer. And what he saw was an object coming horizontally. He said it was enormous, absolutely enormous. And it just went out of his field of vision. They were not allowed to even turn their heads. He knew of a Navy diver who, either that day or the following day, was the first guy down to investigate. We actually had ships converging on this, apparently, which he got from radar personnel who talked about them. Anyway, the Navy diver goes down there. Again, this is according to what this man said to me, but I think that I believe this man. The Navy diver didn't even realize that he was standing on the craft. It was so large. And in fact, he got so upset, he got so scared, he urinated in his diving suit. He lost bladder control. It's not hard to think about, really. In fact, said that this object was translucent, or partly transparent, and looked like it had a honeycomb type of pattern inside. It was very interesting. He gets pulled up. He's very upset. And again, according to this story, a diving team went down the following day to do a further investigation, and the object was gone. It was apparently huge. So let's call it a failed retrieval operation, if true. I did speak to another U.S. Navy individual who wasn't part of Dominic, but was in the Pacific Fleet at that time, and also said to me bogies were typically reported by them in the Pacific at that time. So, interesting. And then you have, the famous cases of the 60s and 70s. All of these we know about through efforts of very effective investigators and freedom of information. Minot Air Force Base, 1966, Malmstrom, Shag Harbor. Maybe the best documented case of all is Shag Harbor of Nova Scotia, 1967. Object goes into the water. U.S., Canadian navies, and the Soviets are hanging out there too. Everyone's interested in this object. According to Chris Stiles, who investigated this in great detail, witnesses saw 2 objects, not one, leaving the water after a few days. And then along the U.S.-Canadian border, Grant talked about this. He was kind of a witness to some of this on his side of the border in Winnipeg. Along the U.S.-Canadian border, 1975, major sightings by predominantly U.S. military, some Canadian military, of objects that defy explanation to this day. Cat and mouse games, attendant intercepts, the whole thing. All of this is well documented. I've written about it. Other people have written about it. And then, of course, one time I did Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. And George, in his, quintessential, distinctive voice, said, "Richard, what do you believe is the most impressive UFO sighting in history?" Caught me off guard, and I tossed out this case, the Iranian one. Pretty good one. It's great intrinsically for what actually was involved, and it's also great because we've got very good documentation. This is a U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency memo. The distribution list on this memo included U.S. President Gerald Ford, CIA Director George Herbert Walker Bush, and a fellow by the name of Henry Kissinger all received this memo. And what it describes is, it's amazing. And again, we got this because of that beautiful little accident of history that allowed Freedom of Information Act actually to be worth a damn. It describes an object that was seen over the city of Tehran. This is in the days of the Shah, a totally different era. Iranian citizens see it. They go, "What is this?" They call the local airport. Traffic controller sees it. He calls the Iranian Air Force. They send 2 F-4 fighter interceptors in succession. Both of them get to a range. They see it on radar. They see it visually. It's bright. It's intense. It looks like nothing they've ever seen. Both of them have key things that go wrong with their aircraft at a range of 25 nautical miles. In this case here, I'll just read you. As the F-4 approached at a range of 25 nautical miles, he lost all instrumentation and communications. When the F-4 turned away from the object and was apparently no longer a threat to it, the aircraft regained all instrumentation and communications. And then later on it says, another brightly lighted object came out of the original object. The second object headed straight toward the F-4. So he's going to intercept, and this thing's coming at him. He turns away to get out of the way. This object turned inside his own arc, according to the memo, and then rejoined the mother craft for a perfect rejoin. What the hell can do that? Even today, much less 40 years ago. It's a pretty good case. Crash retrieval that I think happened in Bolivia in 1978. Again, we've got a document on this. Basic thing here. You have U.S. personnel going into Bolivia, and they take over. They take over the situation. We have a State Department memo, including a statement from U.S. Secretary of State Cyrus Vance that talks about it. A project known as Moondust was activated for this. What was Moondust? For what we can tell, it was a retrieval team. It was a retrieval team to recover not just Soviet space junk, not just our space junk, but objects that were unidentified flying objects. That was actually in the Moondust document. Moondust was activated for this Bolivian case. Whatever this was, looked like it was something very unusual indeed. China had here. This is one of my theories. I think that we get a lot of UFO data during periods of great political instability. So in case of the U.S., we had Vietnam and Watergate that caused enough instability that we had a strengthened FOIA that resulted in some information. In Spain, after Franco died, same thing. Several hundred Spanish military UFO cases came out. After Mao died in China, same thing. There was openness. And what this did is it allowed some researchers to pull some data out and publish it. This is one of the cases. And this is a fascinating case. And by the way, it ended up in a CIA report at Lintao Air Base. This is in the middle of China. This is a big country. And this is not on the shore. This is right in the heart of China. 10 o'clock at night, you have several hundred Chinese military personnel watching an outdoor movie, like a drive-in, right? And a large object passes very low, going west, going deep into the heart of Asia. What is that? Well, they got a good look at it. It was long, so it wasn't round, it was elongated. 2 searchlights, glowing tail. And the words of the document, of the witnesses, clearly not a meteor, nor a swarm of locusts or birds, nor an airplane. As we are all fighter pilots, we could say this with some certainty. You can tell a little bit of sardonic humor there. In the files of the CIA, the statement is the object covered half the sky, causing extreme astonishment. Indeed, it would. And again, this is a huge object, and we get this every now and then. These huge objects. You think back a few years ago to 2008, Stephenville, Texas, an object also that covered an enormous part of the sky when it was over. What are these objects that are so large? How could they be that big? Who's making them? I'll come back to that. Chile, 1978. This was a big year. 1978 was an enormously important year in the history of the UFO. Tends to be forgotten. You have some skeptics saying, oh, well, that was the year Spielberg's movie, Close Encounters, came out. And, you have that effect. That's baloney. But it was a big year. If there was any Spielberg effect, it would only be because there would be more witnesses, people maybe looking. You're not going to see a UFO if you're not looking for one. Well, I guess you could, but you're more likely to see a UFO if you're up looking. So perhaps there was a heightened awareness, but there is no way in hell that this encounter is part of the Steven Spielberg effect. In Chile, December 1978, you have 2 Chilean F-5 fighter pilots doing some training exercises, and they encounter on both of their aerial radar, both of their airborne radar, and also ground-based radar. You have 3 radars tracking an absolutely humongous object. They get visuals. Now, these guys, they're doing training exercises, so they don't have weapons. But they're flying toward this thing anyway. And according to one of the pilots, scared out of their minds. Who wouldn't be? As they get close to this, he described it as it almost sounds humorous, but I don't think he meant it. It's like a huge plantain banana swathed in like a haze type of a thing. He gets close to it, and it instantly accelerates, and it's gone. According to the radar, this thing had the radar return of 10 aircraft carriers. 10. It boggles the mind. Boggles the mind. The Chilean government seemed pretty confident about that. They spoke about it. There was a kind of open statement about it, and basically shrugging shoulders, thinking, well, we don't know what this was. But it happened. They got it. They recorded it. The pilots saw it. What more do you want?